So we're talking today about the bedrock of individuality. And I call it the bedrock because it's so important for us. You know, we step into this realm of religion, of spirituality. We get in all these trends that are out there, and there's all kinds of things that you can get involved in, all kinds of seminars you could attend, and they probably all have something good to offer. I have been to many things over the course of my life that I left feeling really good. But those usually wear off. You know, they last a while, and the excitement goes, and then you're kind of left with your life and yourself, you know, with what do I do with this situation? What do I do with myself? And so as good as these things are, and they will all give us, add something to our understanding of the mechanics, I think, of spirituality, I think would be a good way to say it, the principles that are involved. It helps to know that. But when it comes down to it, it's really an intuitive application of these things, because your life is, you know, it's very unique to you. I was thinking this morning about, you know, how much time we spend just trying to figure things out, and you know, we can spend lifetimes contemplating things like which came first, the chicken or the egg. Well, I've solved that for you, so I'll let you know so you can stop thinking about that. But everybody knows you have eggs for breakfast and you have chicken for dinner. So that's it. Eggs come first. All right? So we can stop messing with that one. And there are a lot of others that are like that, and you'll see about 90% of the news made up of things just like that. So you can decide, you can let go of a lot of stuff, you know, and not really hurt your life too much. But I was also thinking about what this bedrock of individuality means. And I think a real good illustration, which I did not include in my bulletin cover message, is to just simply think of an artist, a painter, who has a palette of paint, all colors of paint, whatever color they need to do whatever they want to do. And that artist then decides what they will do, and probably not too far ahead of when they do it. Many artists work intuitively. It's like if you put a color on and you weren't really thinking about how that might blend, you blend something else with it a little bit, and maybe it gives you another idea, so you go a different direction. I do that with music. Whenever I write a song, the tune always comes to me first. And I don't know why, but I cannot write words and then put a tune to it. It's always the other way around. And I don't read music, I don't literally write it, but I hear it. It's intuitive. And it's always been that way. And then I'll put words to it. I'll try to think of a message to add to what I hear. And I never know how it's going to turn out exactly. It never turns out like I thought. And then if I go to record it in my home studio, the recording will turn out differently as well. Because you go with things happen that you didn't know were there. You get ideas you didn't know you were going to get when you work intuitively. And so the painter is using the paint, putting on the canvas, and is coming up with this work of art. And where does that come from? Where does that work of art come from? You can say that God gave it to that artist. You know, if the painting is good. I knew a woman, she was in our church in Missouri, who specialized in painting horses, and like first class horses, high level kinds of horses. And she did this one painting where this horse was looking out the stall out over a gate. And it looked like it was just standing there, you know, right there, just so realistic. It was unbelievable. And she looked at it and, well, that could be fixed and that could be fixed. She didn't see it like I saw it, but that's where does that come from? You know, it's is it a gift of God? And what we could say is the life, love, power, and intelligence is the gift of God. That's the palette. What we do with that is what we do with that. That's us. It's our individuality. And how do we know this? Because you could take two artists, two painters, give them the same palette of colors, stand them up side by side, put them side by side, and say, paint a picture of a horse looking out a stall. And do you think those two paintings would be alike? You know, both are drawing from the universal palette of color, and both will come up with something entirely different. So there is something that happens between the universal and the personal expression. And that's us. That's what we are. We are all drawing upon the universal palette of life, love, power, and intelligence, and we are expressing these elements, these colors, in a very unique way. Some are expressing it in a way that is actually harmful to the artist, to the person expressing, and some are expressing in a way that is giving to a lot of people. That is a completely different type of expression. But they're both drawing from the same source. The decision-making process is what occurs in the individual. And that's why it's so important to understand individuality. We see the trend of join the group, you know, get with this group or that group, and you'll be somebody, you'll be something, you'll have some representation. You will have identity, and your identity is grounded in that group. It's called identity politics now, these days. And I think it's very destructive to the individual. That's my personal opinion, my judgment. Now, I'm not trying to get political here, but there are many things in the political realm that are destructive to the individual. We want to enhance the artist. We want to understand the artist. We want to know that we are all drawing from the same source, but we are expressing in a unique way. And what happens when you say, well, I'm not enough as I am, so I will join this group so I can be something more. We're taking somebody else's colors, we're taking somebody else's ideas, and we're trying to put that on our canvas. And we do put it on our canvas, but it is not us. And for every one of those things that's on our canvas, we feel a little bit unsettled. Something's not quite right. We don't feel quite right about that. And so to compensate for that feeling of lack, we run out and join another group or try to fill that void in some way. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with joining groups. There's nothing wrong with taking painting classes. There's nothing wrong with learning from other people. But as I had pointed out, what did the Da Vinci's and the Mozarts and the Beethovens and the Van Goghs, what did they do once they learned from their teachers? And they all had teachers. What made them who they are? What set them apart from everyone else? They took what they learned and then they expressed their individuality. They painted or they wrote music or they did whatever, invented or whatever they did from the bedrock of their individuality. And that doesn't mean that we all have to be a Da Vinci or a Van Gogh or whatever. It's not saying that at all. But to the extent that we are doing that, we are in harmony with our whole life, with what we're here to do, to express uniquely that which we are. And this came up this week because somebody was commenting on something on Facebook, I think it was. But Jesus advised us to love our neighbor as ourselves. We often focus on the first half of this statement, yet engage in a rather abusive relationship with ourselves. We can only love our neighbor to the extent that we love ourselves. And I think this came up in the context of one of the mass shootings that we had. And somebody said, all we need to do is learn to love one another. Is that true? Is that really the solution to this problem that we're having here? It is probably true if we all truly could love one another. But if that's taught in churches like this, then churches would be the safest place on the planet to go, wouldn't they? And how many mass shootings have occurred in churches? You know, people go where people are trying to be loving. And they make those people the target because they know there will be nobody shooting back. And I don't want to go down that road and make a statement there, but this is true in so many things. It's true in so many areas that we have these religious people get up and say, all you have to do is love your neighbor, love somebody else. Well, there's a lot of people that will take advantage of that. That's human nature. Should we just love all the computer scammers that are out there and they'll all go away? You lost how much? $9,000 on your $10,000 on your card. So do we love this person that took your $10,000 and everything's good? So you take the brunt, you take the hit? Is that what it means to be a spiritual person, a spiritually minded person? We got to think about these things, because if you do that, if you give up a part of yourself that is not okay with that, you're trying to make yourself something that you're not. This thing that Jesus said, to love your neighbor as yourself, he was reiterating an Old Testament idea. And I would contend that we have left off the second part of that we do love our neighbor about as much as we love ourselves, that we don't understand how love works through us. We think that loving other people, loving an enemy of society is the solution, but we are shutting off a part of ourselves if we're not starting with love at the center of our being as a freeing place to be. Are you free enough to press charges against the person that took your $10,000? Do you feel okay with that? To hold somebody accountable? Is that not a spiritual principle as well? It's good judgment, in my opinion. It may be totally offensive to you. But there are so many things that religion has taught that make us doormats to the world. And I don't think we're here to be doormats to the world. Jesus was not a doormat. He didn't just let people run over him. There's no indication that he did. He didn't resist them, but he didn't agree with them either. He didn't sell his soul so people would like him. He lost his life because he didn't care what people thought. He gave his life for the world or for his own individuality. I think that's what it comes down to. He was so true to his principles that he took it to the ultimate. And I don't think any of us will be called on to make any kind of choice like that. I hope we're not. But he was living what he taught, and he was willing to go the distance with that. And I have said many times that we will sacrifice ourselves a lot of times, sacrifice what we truly feel or believe at the deepest level, just to get along with other people. And that's the attempt to love your neighbor as yourself. So you try to love your neighbor, but you're shutting off yourself. You're shutting off what you truly feel, what's truly going on in you. So it's better, I think, to be honest in the communication, to say, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I don't agree with it, and I'm not going to go along with it. I just sometimes think when I see news and there's people out marching with signs, waving all over the place, screaming, and I don't know what it is about that, but it just has the opposite effect on me. It's like, who would do that? And maybe some of you do that. That's okay. I'm not judging in that. Well, I guess I am judging. But does it accomplish anything in terms of a spiritual awakening? In terms of you, the unhappy person, finding something in yourself that really grounds you? Isn't that what we're after? Because as soon as you solve that cause, or as soon as it gets away from you, another one's going to pop up, and it's going to not help. Your life is going to be just like it was. So you're trying to love a neighbor, you're trying to love somebody, but you're disliking somebody else in the meantime. And the somebody else at the top of the list is you. It's like, I will fight for this thing, I'll fight to the end, but you lose your soul. You gain the world, but you lose your soul in the process. That's what we want to watch. And I'm not saying don't get politically involved, don't, you don't care what I say anyway, you do it whatever you want, but that's not what I'm advocating. It is so important to listen to you, to tune into who you are at the deepest level, and to follow that, not to get emotionally charged by something that's going on and go down that path and just not be able to sleep at night. I saw some reporter say, I haven't slept since Trump was elected. So what kind of a problem is that? It's just ridiculous that somebody would allow something like that to so influence their life that they lose themselves. And there's so much of that going on now, it's just unbelievable. But it is, the spiritual thing guides us through that type of thing. It keeps us in touch with what is real. And when you touch what is real in yourself, you will tend to express it in the outer. Your picture, your painting will reflect not all this junk that's going on in your brain, but what is rising in you at the deepest, from the deepest level. It's real. And your life starts looking real. I've actually shut the news off. Beth and I gave up our cable television. I was watching it every day. And it drags you down and you don't even know it. You start thinking of problems that you don't really have. And your mind starts clearing up. It's like a drug that when you stop using it, your mind clears. But you don't even know the effect it's having on you. But the news is not created to resolve anything. It is created to perpetuate chaos. And the more chaos, the higher the ratings. Did you notice when the hurricane was coming? It's going to be the worst thing that's ever happened to all of us. Well, it might have been the worst thing to happen to a few. But it wasn't this great catastrophe. That's a news item. And that's what that business does. And it is a very strong influence on all of us. But I guarantee you, if you shut it off, your life will start getting better tomorrow. That'll start wearing off. And yes, I like to know what's going on in the world, but do you know what's going on in the world when you see a news broadcast of it? Is that really what's going on, or is that what they want you to think it's going on? There's no way for you to tell because you're not there. I was on a news program years and years ago about this woman in Missouri that they were contemplating pulling the plug on her. She was on life support. It was a national case. It was a famous case, and I can't think of her name at the moment, but they invited me on as a minister to give my opinion about, is it ethical to to allow somebody to die. And I said, I don't think you can legislate that. But what I didn't know is they had another person who is a fundamental Christian that said it's absolutely a sin. So I was on one screen apparently, she was on another, and we were fighting. I didn't even know it. But that's what they want. You know, they want to have these problems. I mean, I was confronted suddenly with this other person with a completely different opinion. I thought I was just going to go give my opinion. Well, I did. But what they didn't want my opinion, they wanted a fight. And that's what it's about. So when you plug into that, that's what understand that. That's what you're doing. There's not one network out there that's not doing that. Some are doing it from the left, some are doing it from the right, but they're all doing it. And it's you shouldn't believe any of them. You know, you listen to yourself. And yes, what's going on out there, we all want to know. But it takes me about 5 seconds to get the headlines on the internet. But that's just me. I'm doing my best to love my neighbor, and when I watch the news, I can't stand half the country, so that's not a real healthy thing to do. Emilie Cady said, self-love is not the same thing as self-centered egotism, and I think we all understand that, don't we? Self-love is, we're talking self with a capital S. In her book, Lessons in Truth, she draws a very clear distinction between individuality, the spiritual dimension within everyone, and personality, the spiritually disconnected ego. The word ego has been kind of run into the ground in a negative way. The word comes from, it's an English translation of the word, or ego is a Greek word that translates into English as capital I. I. And that's all it is. Your I is not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing. But we put a whole bunch of stuff on ego. So we use that term, and I've got to get rid of this ego. You would say, I've got to get rid of this I. No, you don't. You don't want to get rid of it. You want to get to know it. You want to know it at its deepest level. So the spiritually disconnected ego, or the spiritually disconnected I, is that part of us that's scattered and running all over the surface of life, just taking the paint and splattering on the canvas. You probably make $1 million doing that too, but it is without any order. It's just whatever happens, I hope this works kind of thing. But there's a level in us that when we touch it, our life starts working. And when we get away from it, it doesn't work. And you can always tell you've gotten away from it by how you feel. If you feel fear, if you feel anger, if you feel resentment, you feel that the rest of the world is running over you, or whatever that feeling might be, you've gotten away from your central I, from your central ego with a capital E, that good part of you. Love is not a quantity of beautiful emotion that we possess and give out or withhold at will. That's where the people that stand up and say, all we need to do is love. It's like, I've got this big bushel basket full of love, and if I just give some here and some there, and everything will be good. But love draws to us that which is for our highest good, and love dissolves that which is not. So that person that is causing you problems, or looks to be causing problems, you may need to release them. You may need to let love dissolve that relationship. That you don't have to throw your arms around that person. If there's a mass shooter someplace, you don't have to say, let's all love this person. You know, he must have had a bad childhood, or this or that. Allow love to take this person down the path that they've chosen for themselves. Nobody forced them to do that. There's something wrong in the way they see the world. And nobody knows. I mean, every time something like this happens, you get all these commentators get up, news thing. Everybody's trying to figure out, and they make them famous. And they read his manifesto, and they guarantee that the next kook that sees something like this says, look at the publicity I'm going to get. So the media helps create this kind of thing. It helps perpetuate it. So love is not going to do anything to change that. Shutting off your television will help a lot more. But why do we do this kind of thing? Because it draws ratings. Terror draws ratings. We're interested in that kind of thing. But are we really? Because we look at it and we're appalled by it. And we say, why? But we keep looking at it. Is that really who we are? Is that really what we are? What is love? What role does love play there? If it dissolves everything unlike itself, I say, is this really to my benefit? Can I really do anything about this by feeling so miserable? By asking so many questions, trying to figure out why this deranged person did this? Is there an answer? And what about the next deranged person and the next one? How many times has this happened? It's happened over and over again. And it's just, there's no end to that. That's the way, the nature of humanity. You know, back in the Old Testament, thou shalt not kill. That's a commandment. Is anybody obeying that? Most of us are. But there's always that one that won't. So we pass laws to control that person. You're never going to do it. Do you realize when somebody shoots somebody else, they break every law in the books? So are 10 more going to help? They'll break those too. It's the wrong approach. But when we buy into this kind of thing, it drags us down into a level that we do not belong. We don't want to be there. It's very important for us to understand that, understand what's happening. We're being sold a bill of goods that have nothing to do with what we're after in life. And we get sucked into this vortex, and life just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. We wonder why there's so much going on out there that's so crazy. And we think love is the answer. All we have to do is love. It's a lot more than that, as we normally think of love, because love is not this quantity of beautiful emotion that we possess and we pass out. It's an integral component of our being, like the color blue is an integral component of white light. We let love dissolve that addiction that we have to getting sucked into that level of experience. Can we do that? Are we willing to give up that addiction? That's what we have to ask ourselves. Do I sound like a preacher today or what? Sorry. The expression of love must include the embracing of one's. You hear this stuff so many times. Sometimes I want to get a sign and go out and demonstrate. The expression of love must include the embracing of oneself in a way that recognizes our role as a channel through which love is expressed as an aspect of our wholeness. That's a pretty long sentence. But do you get it? That love, to be most effective, we must see it as the beginning. It's that part of us that is attracting to us the highest and best. It's that thing at work in the artist's mind as they're painting the picture. That, I got a little bit too much yellow here, I need some red, or I need something, and pull this over here, pull that. That moves that creative process. That's where we want to be. That love is doing that through us now. It is guiding and directing, but we're so locked into a level of life that doesn't allow that to happen. So to us, we say, okay, the world just needs more love, like that's a thing that we're going to throw out there. But love it relates to us, is at that core level, at that individual level. And that's where we need to think of it. It's that expressed as an aspect of our own wholeness. That probably didn't make a lot of sense, but it did when I wrote it. Our individuality, our true self, is that part that rises up from the eternal. Many of us have fallen out of touch with our true self and have lived and thought of ourselves only in terms of the personality level. It's very important that we reconnect with this foundational aspect of our being, for it is from it that all the good we seek flows. That's where the masterpiece comes from. It comes from us being true to ourselves at the very deepest level, not listening to the influences that come in from the outside. And of course, we don't shut the whole world off. We're in this world, but not of it. It's honoring our individuality. If we're not centered in our spiritual nature, we try to get what we feel we lack from others, and our relationships run the risk of becoming needy and manipulative. You probably have noticed that. To be in integrity with yourself is to express the qualities of God in all of the things you do, including your relationships. When you love from this self, you will have no trouble understanding what it means to love your neighbor. All right, I probably totally confused everybody here today, so that'll give you something to think about. So let's just quit there. All right, thanks for coming out, and we'll hopefully see you next week.
You've been watching a talk presented at the Unity Church of Grand Junction by Reverend Doug Bator. We would like to thank everyone who joined us here today in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado, as well as those of you who are joining us online. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Also, please feel free to share this video with anyone you think might be interested or benefit from this message. If this video brought value to your life, please consider making a donation by clicking the link below to our PayPal donation account. Thanks again so much for watching.